Christal Jordan with Enchanted Branding and Public Relations, and I'm here for the 2016 Holy Convocation with Bishop C. Allen. And I'm so excited to be here talking to a group of pastors, young pastors, about how to effectively brand and market their business and their message. A lot of times we don't think about churches as actually needing to have an actual brand strategy, but they absolutely do.
Christal Jordan, as she comes to share with us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, Pastor Allen, for having me. And it's great to be here with you all. It's a blessing, actually, to be here with men and women of God this morning. I have, my company is called Enchanted Branding and Public Relations, and it's based here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I have had the honor of working with a lot of entertainers and celebrities here. The bulk of what I do today is working with people like TLC or T.I., Sierra, different people like that. But it's exciting for me to be here today because I remember graduating from University of Oklahoma a few years ago. I won't mention how many years ago. And I went back to my church home to my pastor, who I love dearly, Bishop Carlton Pearson. I don't know if any of you all know him. Bishop Pearson. And I was so excited to be able to take what I had learned at the University of Oklahoma in public relations and take it back to my home church. I grew up under Bishop Pearson's tutelage as a little girl. I thought he was the absolute biggest person in the world. I came from a single parent family, and to be able to go to church on Sunday and hear from a man of God like Bishop Pearson was a blessing. Yes. And so I returned after being in college and getting married and having children, and went back to serve at my church. And
That's awesome.
I don't know if any of you all know the history, but that may be for another conversation. But I learned a lot about ministry, about getting a message across, and about being an example for God and for God's message. And so with that, it feels like I've come full circle to be back talking to men and women of God about how we can do what we do more effectively. And you are in the world, but not of the world. Yes. But you have to learn how to operate the way the world does in order to be effective. Amen.
Amen.
So with that said, I am so pleased to be here. I feel right at home. I want this to be a conversation, so I encourage you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit, but I think in order for anything to be effective, you have to know how to utilize it in terms of your everyday use. Yes. So I look forward to hearing your questions, kind of after we get started. I want to talk to you guys about creating a responsible brand. A lot of times, my work with entertainers and even athletes, we are trying to create something that people are going to buy into, something that people are going to buy music, they're going to buy merchandise. It doesn't really matter. A lot of times it's going to sound bad, but I'm going to be honest with you all. A lot of times it doesn't. The truth is not in our diagram. Yeah. We're looking for what's going to sell, what's going to be most effective. We study what consumers trust, and we find that. From my vantage point, in this business, you have a double responsibility. Yes. Because not only do we need to find out what's going to be effective with consumers or with parishioners or with the public, because how many of you know that your public is not necessarily just your flock? Yes. Your public is the world in which you've been mandated to deliver a message to. Yes. So the people right in front of you are your immediate audience, but with social media and the way the world is now, you have the opportunity to reach the world in a much broader scope than we did years ago. So you have that responsibility to deliver a responsible message to that public, but we also have a greater responsibility to do that in a way that we honor God. Yes. And that we can be responsible as we deliver that message, right? Yes. So I feel like it's especially important to study, to show thyself approved in the Word, and then also in the world. Yes. Because it's just you have much greater risk and much greater reward. So years ago, growing up, as I said, I grew up at under higher dimensions, but my mother was a Pentecostal praying mom. And she substituted, since we didn't have a father, she substituted our missing parent with the gospel. So we watched televangelists on, that was the thing. If you were on television, we watched Oral Roberts faithfully, we watched Lester Summerall. Probably some of you probably won't know who those old school pastors were. But that was what you did. Kenneth Hagin, Kenneth Copeland, Fred Price. We watched those pastors on television, and the televangelist was that was, I guess, the the pivotal point when a pastor had become successful. You took your church to a television audience so you could reach the world. I was involved in that at Higher Dimensions. We were on television, and so we were part of the television ministry. So you want to make sure that you're delivering a message that is not only going to connect with your immediate, but also the region that you're going to be reaching. Well, today the televangelist is not the biggest. It's not the biggest. It's not the biggest scale, I guess, for a pastor. The internet and social media allow you to reach a much broader audience on a much lower budget, which is great, praise God. So I think the televangelist has really been replaced by a social media personality that can reflect what's happening in his pulpit, but also be able to connect with the world. Social media is exciting because there are no limits. You have the ability to reach numerous people, different countries, different time zones, different cultures. So it's really exciting. But it also, like I said, it comes with a great responsibility. What corporations know is that social media is able to affect your marketing, your communications, your customer insight, and your reputation preservation. Okay? So you're able to really get to know people on, I guess, a multi-leveled situation. You're able to introduce who you are. You're able to communicate what that message is, give them insight on who you are, and then also be able to preserve your brand. Social media is a consumer-centric landscape. That means that social media users are highly influenced by positive comments as well as negative comments online. So where before we were watching television, and if you didn't like a televangelist, you did what? You turned the television on. Turn it off, right? So, Nielsen ratings come in, and pastors were priced by ad companies according to how well their show went. If your show did really well and you had a lot of people tuning in, then you could get higher. Advertisers would pay more money, and in turn your television program grew. But you didn't really have the feedback from a negative audience. I remember there was a huge crisis with Oral Roberts when I was really little, but I was always fascinated with public relations theory and how the public could affect the business of your church, your organization. The public perception can affect your money. It can affect your morale of your team. So there was a scandal with Oral Roberts, and when people got upset with pastors, they would write letters. They would write a letter. They would send the letter to several other people, and I can remember being in church and pastor saying, so I got a letter. He put it in the mail. I remember Fred Price being on on Sunday morning and saying, "Don't send me a letter when you get upset." Well, a letter the only way you would know about a letter is if you read it to your congregation, or if someone else received a letter and they shared it. But today with social media, someone could go to your page and go to your post, and they can comment negatively on what you're doing, right? Now, we know science shows us from psychology that the average person is 8 times more likely to report something negative than they are something positive, okay? So if they come to your church on Sunday, they have a great time. They feel welcome. They have a great experience. They leave feeling like they had a great interaction with God and with the rest of the congregation. That doesn't mean that person is necessarily going to go to your page and post that. Because, we enjoy something, we take that for us. Now, if they were to come to your church and have a negative experience, you can be sure that that person is at least 80% more likely to go and say something negatively about that and post it on social media. What our numbers show us with social media is that people are more likely to look at that information and take that into their own judgment call. Okay? So although we have the ability to reach more people, which is great, we also have the ability to destroy our reputation a lot faster, and there's a lot more to lose than there was before. There are businesses people look up online and see if you get like a good business rating or a bad business rating. But for a church or for a pastor, you really can't afford to have that type of negative publicity because it really colors the situation badly. And so I want you all to be mindful of that and understanding when you're moving forward on social media. It's important that your feedback is very important. I know some pastors will, we don't have to bring up names. We know a lot of pastors have gone through scandal and life. We are all human and the flesh is fallible. But there's a way to handle things the correct way so that you can preserve your brand and preserve the ministry and preserve the message. Because I was always taught it's really more about the message than the man, So I'm going to go into some various points that I think are very important when you're establishing your social media brand, which should be consistent with the brand of your overall organization. But today we're going to focus on the information that you're going to be putting out to the public. I pulled a Bible verse that I use actually with clients that are not in church, and they always are like, where'd you get that from? But 1 Thessalonians 5:22 says, abstain from all appearance of evil. That's a very simple verse that applies to most things. That's actually how you can sum up your social media brand. That's probably the best way to sum that up, is to abstain from the appearance of evil. You will notice it doesn't say evil. It's the appearance of evil, I was dealing with a client most recently. We were going through a crisis situation, and he said, well, Christal, I just want to tell the truth. That's not what happened. I want to be able to tell people the truth, and this is what happened. And I said, well, the truth is not always important. Sometimes it's the way things look. And sometimes it's the way something is presented that causes the public to make a decision and to make a judgment call. So when the Bible said avoid the appearance of evil, that was so that we had the ability to realize that even if something is not evil, if it looks that way, it can influence someone else negatively. Okay? The first point, you guys have to bear with me. I'm still dealing with a summer flu, so I'm sure I sound a little scratchy, but the words are what's important. The first thing that I think every charisma, especially important in this genre, most pastors or men of God or women of God are very charismatic by nature. That's part of the gift that most of you all have been imparted. But when I say charisma in this way, I mean you have to be able to reach out and connect with what's important to the public. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the saying, you can't be so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good, So what you want to do is you want to look for opportunities to deliver messages via social media that connect with the general public. It doesn't necessarily need to be what you're dealing with, because you should be at a different place if you're leading, correct? But what we're looking for is things that are going on in the world, things that are connected with the general public that they feel an emotion to and a connection with. When you can speak to those things, topics chosen should connect with the emotion of the people that you're serving. So I think it's always smart to do research. Look and see who you're trying to reach, who is your target market. I remember being a young girl and being in church, and we knew certain pastors spoke about certain things. That was their specialty. Certain artists deliver certain things, You wouldn't go to a Beyonce concert looking for the same thing that you would at a Jill Scott concert. But by the same token, I know when I would listen to Kenneth Copeland on Sunday, I was going to get a very different message than when I listened to Oral Roberts on a Sunday, And I think that doesn't mean we all have the ability to deliver a cohesive message of God, but I think that He's blessed certain people with certain messages, right? So once you know what your specialty is, what that message is, find a way to connect that with the general public, okay? In a way that connects with their emotions. So that's the first point, is charisma. The second is concise. It's important that leaders are clear about their beliefs. If there's a topic that you're not as strong about, it would be wise to steer clear of that topic. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you why. I've seen this happen in leadership online. People will make a comment that's very bold. Okay, someone makes a comment back and they disagree, and the people go back and forth. In leadership of any kind, if you have doubt, if you're not clear about your actual beliefs and you can't explain your argument, it's not a good place to be. Your leadership comes into question at that point. Okay? So I think you have to be able to, and a lot of times on social media, being concise means being able to deliver the point in a short, effective way. Okay, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that posts should be. This society is moving into a very, very like they call microwave society. We want things to be in short, concise bites that we can digest that aren't too much. So we're looking to make sure that our messages that we deliver, whether they're posts on Facebook, whether they're posts on Instagram, are concise messages that are charismatic, but yet something that you feel very strongly about and you're able to speak to very well. Because trust me, 9 times out of 10, there will be someone that disagrees with your point. And if you're able to communicate your views in a clear, concise manner, that's the way that we show leadership. Okay. I don't want you to get into something that you're not quite sure. Because I've gone to a pastor before and asked a question, and he said, I'm not sure about that. And I respect that because I'm also in the church and I understand. But the general public, if you said that, that could cause doubt and concern and could throw someone off. And it doesn't work to establish a really consistent, responsible brand. So I'm asking you to look to speak about topics that you feel full confidence in, that you have full confidence in, that you're able to speak to very well. That's the main thing. The next is, it goes right along with that, is with confidence. Now, I put down here, leaders, especially pastors, should speak with a gentle authority. And I like those two terms together. You have to speak with authority. You have to speak, being able to deliver God's message is a huge burden. It takes a lot of responsibility. But we also have to remember that you impart things with love and with a sense of humanity that I think sometimes can get lost when people are responding, especially if they feel like they're being attacked. What I tell people in any field is before you respond to anything that is negative, take a break. You all may want to pray. Take a break. Because you want to make sure that you're responding not in the flesh, you're responding with a gentle authority, because I think that is the place that God has put you in. If you're a pastor, if you're a leader, even if you're a leader of any kind, there's a gentle authority that should come, much like the way God deals with us. But I think that's extremely important to show a confidence and show an authority, but also to be able to have a gentleness that people connect with and that will make them reconsider it, that they don't feel rebuked. Maybe they feel like their point has been rebuked, but they don't personally feel rebuked, because that's the biggest way to lose people, is that they feel like it's not about what you say to them, but how you say it. And I put in here, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. I would consider myself old school with that. I feel like being boastful or proud can be misjudged a lot of times. I feel like your main point to remember is the message and whose message you're delivering. And so social media, we do see signs that people that are flashy, the flashier we are, the more boastful we are, the more likes we get off times. But I think there's a way to do everything. And I think that's a great scripture to fall back on, to remember that everything that should be communicated should be done in a way that connects with people and doesn't rebuke them, it doesn't make them feel alienated from the message. Most importantly, this is the last point for this, is your consistency. Your voice and message must be consistent, which leads to continuity in your message. How many people know what it's like to speak in first person? Okay. So if you're speaking, if this is a pastor's page, and he's speaking in first person to an audience, it's important to be consistent with that. Just like if it's a church page, and the church page can speak more from a second person and more of a narrative, as opposed to in first person. But I think that's really important to decide before you get started, because for a lot of my clients, I tweet for them or I'll post for them. And whoever is doing that for you, because a lot of you, the bigger your congregation gets and the more successful you become at this social media, you may not have time to be doing the posting all the time. So it's important to find someone that you can appoint to that position that is able to speak with the same voice and the same tone as you do, because people definitely pick up. The consumer is very savvy, and they can definitely pick up on inconsistencies there. And when establishing a brand of any kind, the most important thing we can do is to be consistent. I think in that consistency, people connect with certain things that are that bring color to the situation. I'll give you an example. Back in the 90s when R&B was absolutely amazing, a lot of times people would have songs, and you have your favorite song, and then at the end you hear all these runs or these ad-libs, right? And most people, even with gospel music especially, because the music is absolutely amazing, you remember those ad-libs and those runs of your favorite record. You can sing those, and in fact, if the artist comes to perform and they don't do those exact runs and those exact ad-libs, you are looking like, that is not how you sung it on this record. I want you to sing it and do this run at the end. So that's an example of those little quirky things that people are looking for to connect with. Those are things that make you human, that make you more than just a pastor, that makes you a man or a woman, and that's the thing that makes people connect. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients, I work with Chili from TLC, and she speaks about health and fitness on her Instagram and all her social media channels. She's very seriously about health and fitness. And she has a little saying. She'll go, "Hey, that's my thing." And she calls for her Twitter babies. So if I'm tweeting for her or I'm posting for her, I know that those are key things that her fans are looking to hear from. Those are the things that they love. They like to see the when the new TLC album is coming out or when they're going on tour. But it's those little nuances that connect the fans and that make them feel like, oh, I know her. That makes people feel like I know you. And that's the beauty of social media, because you have a broad audience, you have a worldwide audience where people can feel as if they really know you as a person. And that's when they really start to feel a connection. And that's when, quite honestly, they really start to open up and be receptive to your words, and your message. So I think establishing consistency in the voice is important. I think having a plan before you go into actually establishing your pages. Does everyone in here have a Facebook? Okay, I need everyone should have a Facebook. Everyone should, Facebook especially, because, and you should have all of them, but I'm explaining to you why each of the platforms is important.
That was the question I was about to ask. Which social media platforms are the best or aren't the best for maybe church brands, right? So Snapchat, which I don't know what to do. I'm confused. I talked to us about Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and then a lot of us, some of our churches are using Google Live and Periscope. And just clarity around.
Absolutely, this is good. Very good. So I think.
Does everybody have that same question?
Yes. Okay, great. So let's talk about it. My belief is, this is totally as a publicist, I believe that you should utilize every form of social media for your brand. It moves very quickly, and young people who we need to be reaching, no matter what our message is, everyone realizes that young people are huge consumers. So we need to be able to make sure that we find a format for the message that we have that can fit each of those platforms. Okay. We'll start with Snapchat, since Bishop brought that up first, and that's the one I'm probably not as good with myself. I should be snapping right now, but I'm not. Snapchat is very short bits of information, and so you have about 15 seconds. It allows the viewer to get a small snap into what you're doing at the moment, and then after 24 hours, it's gone. So it started out great for young people, and that's probably still the bulk of who utilize a Snapchat, because it allows them to, you're at a party, you're having a great time, here's my snap, here's what I'm doing. Someone else can look at it if they're a part of your friends only. Only people that you have friended are a part of your Snap audience. So if you don't want your mother, which my daughter, had removed me from her Snap. You don't want your mother to see what you're doing anyway, to utilize for groups within your church. I think that because you want people to feel included. And so I think there's different ways. I've seen people cater to certain groups. It may be a singles group. It could be, a teen group. I think that's something that definitely should be utilized with the youth groups. And it's fun, and it just makes them feel a part of a group. We know that that's one of the biggest things with people feeling accepted and feeling a connection, is that they feel like I have access to something that makes me special. I'm a part of something that's special. So I would definitely encourage Snapchat for groups within your church, and especially, geared towards younger people. Twitter, I'll go to Twitter because that's really easy. It's been around for a long time. Twitter, of course, you have 144 characters, so this is not for you to be giving, sermons or even Bible verses. I think it's for short bits of information. You can post links. You can shorten links for sermons, but I wouldn't even say sermons. I would put short links for small bites of information. And I think that everyone has to be moving towards an era where you're producing short bits of content for easy consumption. Even those of us that are they're not 25 and under, because we're doing so much, we are on our phones, but when you're on your phone, no one really wants to listen to a 30-minute sermon on their phone. So if I'm on Twitter and I see something tweeted and it's a great word from a bishop, and I click on it and it's a 30-minute sermon, I'm probably going to click off, right? Yeah. So we're looking for great pictures, things that are uplifting, or very short bits of information that can be shared via Twitter. Okay, I think it's also a way to converse with your readers or your listeners or even the public, because you can post a question, encourage feedback, and interact with people. Twitter is very important, even though it's, like I said, one of the oldest forms of social media, which is not very old. It's still very important because it allows people to engage in a way that's not overly committed. You can tweet a question, retweet that question, and get various, feedback on the question or answer. And also, like I said, you can get out short bits of information. It's also a great way for people to see. We tweet press release links because people look to Twitter for information. Okay, so if something's going on in the world, situation with Orlando, unfortunately, most of us didn't go to the news. We went to our phones to find out what's going on. So I think that's another point that I'll bring it now. Anytime there's disasters that happen or things that the public is concerned about, I think that it's important for the church to have a message. You guys are aware we're in some very turbulent times, and I know from working in the entertainment industry, people are just looking for a word. You see people that have become, prophetic on Instagram and Twitter and really have no calling to do that. So I think it's extremely important for those that are called to be prayerful and be ready to have a word from the Lord when things like that do happen, because that's where people look. When things happen and they don't understand why this is happening or what's going on, they look to the church. So I think it's important to utilize your voice and be ready for people to come at such a time as that, because when people get down, the first place they look is for someone that has is rooted and grounded in a foundation that I can trust. So I think Twitter is a great way to respond and be ready for things like that. Facebook is probably, there's no reason that everyone in this room should not have a Facebook. If they don't have it right now, they should have it by the end of the day. Facebook is probably the most popular and the most pertinent for religious organizations, because people spend the most time on Facebook. You can also do now, Facebook has the live chat, which is very much like Periscope and somewhat like Snapchat. But most importantly, people will go to Facebook, they leave the page open. They're at their office, they're on their job. Studies show that people leave that window open so that they're able to communicate off and on throughout the day. You can do polls on Facebook. You can have message excerpts and get feedback and have threads that have conversation. And it's just a great tool that people are able to take something from. You get a more substantial, feedback from Facebook if you're doing it correctly. You can have Facebook fan pages that are open to an unlimited amount of people. And then you also have your groups that have a limited amount. I believe it's 5,000 available. But you can also have an open fan page that has that has unlimited numbers, and you can still do the same information there. You can do polls, status messages, ask people their opinion on different things and get their feedback, showcase pictures, you can showcase video. And like I said, it's because you have the greatest amount of retention, it's a great tool to use. What I think is that we'll get into the more business related, I guess, ideas of this. I'm a stickler for pictures. We know that this generation is really driven by what they see. Everything is visual. So if I'm working with an artist and we're doing a spread for a magazine, we may shoot 800 shots and we may pick 2 for the actual cover, for the actual magazine. So this should be no different. You should take what you're doing just as seriously. You shouldn't have, auntie's camera phone pictures up on the page with it's not clear what's going on, and we don't know who's in the picture. You gotta be concise, and we got to do as the world does. And so we need to make sure that pictures are bright, pictures are edited well, they are labeled. If there's a picture from an event that's happening with the children's ministry, that should be clearly labeled. Who's in the picture should be labeled, and so that person can go back and tag and bring other people to the page. Most importantly, I cannot stress enough, the pictures should be attractive pictures. You want to put your best foot forward at all times, and this is all about the face that is going forth from your organization that's going to represent you. So any picture on your Facebook page, any picture that's posted to Instagram especially, the eye, takes in, if there's 5 points when you look at something. So if you see a picture, your eye is going to be drawn here, 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 here. Okay? So when we're doing ads, if we have a bunch of words and scripture and everybody wants to be on the page, that's confusing, and the first thing the person does, they automatically that's just an involuntary reaction. So that's why when we're, as public relations professionals, when we're working with marketing and trying to come up with flyers or information to put out, especially via social media, you need something that's very clean and very clear and very attractive to the eye. Okay, bright colors, pictures with 8,000 people in them all crowded together because you want to make sure that you got the whole group that doesn't need to go on Facebook. Now, if you do, because sometimes people, if something like this, you may want, I can just give me 1 second. You may want to post with a lot of people and make sure that that's in a specific album and that's labeled so people can understand. But your general photos, your profile photos, that should never be the case.
No, because I think we were thinking about the same thing. I thought from yesterday.
Yes.
So you're talking about in the lane of, from the standpoint of the church's actual page, or if it's like the pastor's page, if he wants to post a photo.
Yeah, but if in that case, it still should be labeled, and it should be in an album that explains what's going on in that album. So if you say this was from Holy Convocation, after cocktails and conversations. Okay, cool. That's over here. And we're still making sure that we can label key people, because your point is you want to be able to pull people in. You post on Facebook so that those members can see themselves, they can share it with their friends. So just make sure they're labeled. But make sure if you do have pictures that don't fit the kind that we would use for an ad, they are in an album, in another section. They're not on your front page. And be careful, because on Facebook, when you do post something, a lot of times it will go to your profile page. And when people come to your profile page, you need to make sure that page looks basically like an ad on the website. That's really what it is. Because people are, websites are not as relevant these days. People are going to go to your social media because they want to see not only what you're saying, but they also want to see what other people are saying about you. Absolutely. So Facebook is very, very important, especially for churches and especially for pastors. I would definitely appoint, with any clients that I have, organizations or individuals, at least 2 other people are appointed as admins on those pages. So if someone else needs to go in and post something that's current and pressing, they have the ability to do that. Someone that's trusted, and make sure that it's someone that's trusted, because we've had people go in and change passcodes and they get upset. They don't get a paycheck. We don't have time for that. So make sure that it's someone that you entrust with your ministry, that has access to that, because they are the voice, and that is the face to the public and to the world. Periscope is a great tool. Periscope, the ages for Periscope are a little older. So we got Snapchat. We're looking at teens, like pretty much 21 and under are the focal point for Snapchat, and then we're looking at Periscope, which is going to be probably your 25 to 35, and also where people tune in for a longer amount of time. I still don't recommend doing things longer than the 30-minute span, because it's just not realistic. People are not going to sit there. People become very disengaged. Most of us have ADD of some type, doing our phones all the time. So I think if you're going to Periscope, you can definitely Periscope sermons. People do watch that, but I think if you have a message, you should be looking at a 15-minute block of time. You also want to look at the different time zones that people are able to do that. We know that Facebook is really important because people that have 9 to 5 jobs at their day are able to open their Facebook and leave it open. Periscope is something that people are doing during the day, but not as often as Facebook. Instagram is people are looking at it really quickly on their phones, so there's prime times of the day that you want to post. If you have something inspirational, you probably don't want to post it after 7 o'clock or before like 8 o'clock in the morning. Those peak times are between 10, 12, and 2 on Instagram.
Do those times again.
Instagram, your live posts and live streams on Facebook, you wouldn't want to do those in the evening times. Facebook is the primary use during the day, during the office time. So, and Instagram is just, short posts. Also with Instagram, and I don't do this as well as I ought to, but, long posts on Instagram still are not going to be as effective as something that's short and concise. So you just have to find ways, and I would suggest connecting with a young person that is savvy in these areas to help you come up with messaging that's short and concise. What we usually do is sit down, we understand what the point is we want to get across, sit down as a team and work out how to chop that down into smaller bites so that people can get enough of it to want to come back again, because that's your point, is you want them to come back and return to the site. I want to touch really closely on crisis, because I think this is a problem a lot of times in churches, and that we don't address things as quickly as we should. There is an adage that we use in publicity that says there's no such thing as bad publicity, but this does absolutely not apply for the church. And the reason it doesn't apply is because when leadership shows signs of weakness, the body begins to question leadership and, more importantly, themselves. So it's a total different, you're in a total different landscape, and we get charged differently. But that's, I think, with much responsibility comes much, to whom much is given, much is expected. So my suggestion is that whenever there is an issue within the church, it needs to be addressed quickly. And my reference scripture is Matthew 5:30. If thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of these members should perish, and not the whole body should be cut off. And that basically suggests, if you have someone in leadership that is dealing with something, not before it becomes a public circus and the public are offering their opinion. Again, we're talking about the appearance of evil. We're not talking about reality. This could be something that appears a certain way. I think it's important for leaders to come together and make sure that the situation is taken care of, or at least removed from the public side before the public gets a chance to attack it.
Yes.
And I explained that in that you don't want the body to lose confidence in itself. You don't want disgruntled church members. It's not the same as a disgruntled factory worker. Really, I guess, at the end of the day, he's going to produce less. But when you have members of your congregation that are not in support of leadership, it creates cancer within the body.
Yes. This has happened a lot.
And I think that a lot of times leaders have to realize that part of being a leader is being able to make decisions that may not feel good. It could be someone that you care a lot about, that you see the potential in, but you have to consider what it does to the overall brand. If this person is in a situation that is not in the best interest of the church, it's really best to address that, because once you allow the public to address it, then the entire leadership is questioned. You know? And even in being a supervisor, being in charge of people outside of this mandate, you know, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions.
That's right.
So I'll give you an example. I was dealing with an organization where there was a youth pastor that very young, very charismatic, and there were some rumors circulating that he had been inappropriate with one of the girls. And once something like that is out, once rumors are out, that's something that's that's a very serious situation. And it's very sensitive, because children are something that it's a very sensitive subject. And the pastor decided, because he didn't believe the allegation, to allow the youth minister to continue. As a result of that, people lost confidence in the pastor, and it became a big debacle. Where if, you know, and I don't know the reality if he had really been involved with the girl or not, but sometimes it's not about the actual sin, it's about the appearance and what it's doing for the church. And I just commend you all that sometimes, most often, I mean, you always pray about it, but you need to do what's best for the business and for the congregation, as opposed to, you know, what's best for your relationship with that person. So I think you have to make hard decisions, because it affects the perception, which can affect the overall, you know, success and of the church. And eventually things work out, but just don't be afraid to step up and make hard decisions, because it affects, when the public perception goes and you lose the confidence of your members, the business goes, and churches fall.
That's right.
You know, and so I think it's whether that's what someone's posting on their social media. I don't even allow people to work for my agency, which is entertainment-based related, so we have a lot of flexibility. But if I see you doing things that aren't in line with our brand, you can't work for us. And I think the church even has a higher responsibility to make sure that those that represent the church do it in a way that it reflects in their daily lifestyle.
Do you look at your employees' personal Facebook page?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people will say, well, I have a personal Facebook page. There is no such thing as a personal Facebook page. Let me explain why. My personal Facebook page, say, it just has me on it, and I have you as a friend, and I have Vaughn as a friend. Vaughn is friends with several other people that know, and I post something on my page, I tag Vaughn. Vaughn's able to see it. People on Vaughn's page are able to see it. There's no such thing as personal.
That's right.
Okay, and I feel like when you're representing the church, we're representing yourself. You have a higher responsibility. So I think that's another reason why leadership is so important to pick and people to be ready for the leadership opportunities that they're given. They must be ready for them.
Yes.
You know, and so I think that's something that you have to be mindful of when you're looking for people to be in leadership. And that's something that we, you know, go over, look at their personal pages and see what the content is. Because one of the biggest things outside of all this marketing and branding, we know people know you by your words.
That's right.
By your deeds. And word of mouth is strong.
That's right.
And so, you know, as a Christian, the world is so quick to want to tear you down and figure out why you're not. You know, oh, you did this. People love to throw stones. But when you give people the stones to throw, when you provide them with the stones to throw, then a lot of that responsibility is on you. And I think it's, I was excited to talk about this because it's something that we don't want to talk about a lot of times. It's like, it's not about, you know, I understand we're all in a walk, we're all moving towards a certain place, but some people just aren't ready.
That's right.
And if you put someone in a position that is not ready, then you have set them up to fail. And you've also set them up to be used as an example why someone else could fall. So they could lead someone else astray because they're looking at that person as an example, and that person's lifestyle is not indicative of what the message of the organization is about.
Preaching good now.
So at this point, for crisis, I think things have to be dealt with quickly. And, you know, there's always, everyone should have a marketing communications department within their team, no matter how small. That's just someone that knows how to speak well and how to put things together. And I'm telling you, things are received with a lot more confidence from your members and from the public if you address it first. You know, if they find out and then you want to come giving a statement, you look guilty. You know, I was dealing with this client, and he was saying, well, you know, some things had come up. Somebody was in his DM. Praise God. Somebody was in the DM that should have been there. And he said, well, I just want to, you know, if it comes out, then I'll make a statement. No. You get ahead of it, because that's what leadership means. You take on the responsibility of getting ahead of something and take it, even if it means something that you have to admit, something that you might not have wanted to do. But if you take on the responsibility and say, okay, we've decided this person is not in this position anymore. We're excited about someone else coming in. There's a way to do things the right way. But if you take control of it, if you control the conversation, if it's uncovered and discovered, you are never going to get control of that conversation again. And I just feel like, especially in these times where people are so, you know, those of us that believe and that have a direct order from God to be a light, when you are seen in a different way, it affects people. You know, people are looking for things they can connect with, they can believe in. And when that's tarnished, it really affects people in a way that's negative. So I would just encourage you to, when there's a crisis, deal with it immediately. You know, don't allow it to fester. You know, there's a lot of things that happen when people turn a blind eye to them, and all that does is hurt your church. Great leadership effectively leads within, and then, you know, and then without. So you have to make sure that you put people in a position that are mature and that are ready, that understand what it takes to be a leader, and are able to make those hard decisions when the time comes. This time, are there any questions? You guys have questions for me?
Facebook now has the ability to have your personal page, and you can have like a public figure or a personality page. Maybe the church can have actual page. How do you suggest we go about utilizing those three types of
platforms? I think that every pastor, because it's just a position that people look to for a personal, they look to a pastor in a personal sense and also in a spiritual sense. So, you know, our pastors are our leaders. They're like a father to us. I think every pastor has to have a personal page, you know, and also the church should have, I hate to call it a fan page, but that's what it is. A fan page that has a limited number of subscribers, that has messages that are going out that are consistent with the church. I think that pastors can have a personal page for themselves and their friends, but I would not suggest anything beyond the personal page that is not available for the public page. I don't believe that there is a difference, you know, and I say this across the board. There's just not a difference. I think the only thing with the fan page is it allows you to have unlimited members. And I also don't ever suggest allowing people to be able to post and leave comments on the page that are not part of your admin team. There needs to be an effective admin team for the personal page. For the personal page, if you have family and friends, you know, that could be fine. But I think a pastor still needs another personal page that is open for his congregation. And I just don't believe in people being able to post on the pages, because people are, you know, irresponsible. And we know that those comments affect other people. So I think just being mindful of that, you know, and another thing, if nobody can do it, we can't get upset. You know, if there's an admin and these three people can post, and no one, it's not about my cousin gets to post, but this person doesn't get to post. It's just, you know, this is the information that's going out. This is what we need to share, and that's it. Because otherwise, it gets convoluted. And a lot of times, if someone else is making a post that isn't in line with the message that you're trying to get across, and that's left up there, that can be seen negatively. That can reflect negatively on the person whose page it is.
How do you feel about being able to post simultaneously on different?
They are different, and I think that Instagram and Twitter work well together. Instagram and Twitter, but not Facebook, doesn't relate well because you have more opportunity to engage. And people are very quick to realize when something seems manufactured. So when you have something that's going across every medium, sometimes it can seem manufactured. I suggest Instagram and Twitter together, not Facebook, because Facebook, you just have to be more personable and more, open for communication. You don't have, with Twitter, you have a success number of characters, so you have to have a short message. Where on Facebook, that message may seem too short. But Twitter and Facebook should be able to, relate seamlessly.
We're talking about the short messages. Is it okay to do the Facebook Live for your church services?
I think so. I think it's great. I would not have the entire service on because you're going to lose people. So I would focus on the highlights. Because you want people to know when they come, they're going to come get something great and then tune in again. And if you keep me for 45 minutes, I may not, maybe a little like, I don't know about tuning in the next time. So keep things short because your goal is for people to come back.
Should you do like test runs? Maybe like just see how the service looks on video?
Well, you definitely should do that. You definitely should do that. And you should have, if you're doing a Facebook Live chat, you should have a screen where you can see what's going on right then. If you don't have that, you don't need to do it. But someone should be there. Someone that's appointed to do that should be there with, whenever we do a Facebook Live chat, and I'll tell you something, just honestly, everything needs to look as attractive as possible. So it should be well lit. You should make sure, even if you have another, you're going to be doing a podcast or doing something, make sure that there's lighting so that whoever's speaking is easily seen and looks is seen in a positive light. So for some of my clients, like we don't do Snapchat or none of that unless we looking correct. So she has lights around. You may have extra lights. The person that's doing it needs to be in charge of that and to make sure that how they have the camera set up. You can even get a bigger monitor for Facebook and have it connected to a computer. I'm not an HD person, so I always have someone do that for me. But you can have someone set it up to where you're getting a better quality. Because I would say if it looks dark and it's hard to see, even if the message is great, it doesn't matter. We're in a visual society first and then the audio. So no matter what you have, if you can't see it, the person, and definitely do a test run. But that's kind of hard to do with the Facebook Live, but have it set up to where maybe you do it on another page that's not so big and you guys see what it's going to look like because you want to make sure, I cannot stress enough, lighting is everything. I work with so many Hollywood females that have like if the lighting is wrong, things look totally different. And you'd be surprised how little people are concerned about message if they don't like the way it looks.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Do you feel it's more important to go live, or do you think it's just as potent to have excerpts from maybe the previous night that's been edited or the couple of days before? That way we can actually get a portion that's suitable to send out to the world.
I think that the most important thing is that it looks great. So if it's gonna look better if you edit it, people are so concerned about it being in real time. But if your real time doesn't have the quality, then you're making a mistake. Yeah, you're making a mistake. So if it depends on the level of your ministry, and if you have the tools and capability of doing it live and making sure, and I think my suggestion is always to get the pastor when he's about to deliver the word. I would get some praise and worship if you have a great praise and worship team, and then come back with the word, that main part of that sermon, about 15 minutes. But if you guys don't have the ability to do that, to start and stop, then I would edit it, because if you put it out the next day or throughout the week, chop it up, put it out throughout the week. And that way, it's just, people at home don't know, they just want to hear something inspirational. They're not caring if this was last week's sermon, especially if it's done well. So the ability to edit and resend the message out, that should be done anyway. I think that should be done anyway, even if you have that 15 minutes. Because people see it live, if it's a great word, they may want to see it again. So you should have someone editing it, and it's so easy to find great young people that know how to do that. They are amazing, I'm telling you. There's one in the back right now doing it for me. Be able to take it, edit it, chop it up, and put out short bits of information throughout the week. So I think definitely I would rather you do that than go live and have mistakes and lose someone from coming back again. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure. I hope that something that I've said has helped you all. I have been blessed being here.
Wasn't that fantastic? Come on, y'all. Let's appreciate Christal Jordan and Enchanted PR of Atlanta. Excellent.